Hey guys, Brent Hull Build Show, talking today about an exciting find, okay, an exciting piece of our business, which is really a game changer in many ways. For years, we've looked at carving, historical carving, and it kind of goes in levels, right? There's classical Italian carving, right? And then there's the English carving. Like we've got, you know, here's a piece of English strapwork carving, right? It's fairly simple, okay? It's flat. It's not, you know, there's a little bit of, in the petals of the flowers here, a little bit of movement. For the most part, it's flat and decorative. Not a high level of skill necessary to reproduce this, right? The French carving, on the other hand, French carving is kind of the pinnacle, right? And if you think of Louis XIV, so Louis XIV, 15th, and 16th were the major French kings who were doing crazy stuff during France's greatness, right? Louis XIV was really a patron of the arts, right? He was someone who was encouraging artists to do great things. And really, if you look at how, you know, French stuff is, right, it is just better than everything else. It's just more elaborate, more detailed, it's finer. So if you look at, you know, classical carving, Italian carving, it's pretty, you know, simple, right? It goes back to the Roman and Greek period, and so we see egg and dart, we see leaf and dart, bead and reels, right? We see this class thing. The French did, you know, flowers and cherubs and just everything. And so it's so much fun. So one of the challenges we've always had doing historic restoration, doing these fine homes, is finding a carver who can do great stuff, right? Finding a carver who can execute at a high level. I think for the French things, there's maybe 5 guys in the country, maybe 3, right, who are good enough to be able to replicate the French things. And so about 10 years ago, we started a relationship with a guy in the Ukraine, a carver of a Vasyl. We spent a number of years working together, him doing some carvings for me. He did one of my flower urns with a flame top. I mean, he's done some stuff for me, and I saw that this guy's really talented. 7 years ago, I went over there and visited him, checked out his stuff, really started a relationship with him. And about 3 or 4 years ago, we really worked hard on getting him here. Well, the visa situation wasn't good. We were trying the H1 and the B1 visa. We finally tried the O1 visa. Now the O1 visa is for, you know, super athletes, you know, great hockey players, ballerinas, those kind of superstars who come here. And it required that he get published, that he win some awards, and he'd do some things, which he did, right? And earlier this year, he came and finally arrived in the US. So what we've done is we've been looking for things for him to carve so people can understand what to do with it. In some ways, this is a lost art, right? Well, in a ton of ways, it's a lost art, right? It is something that isn't practiced very much anymore, except maybe by hobbyists, right? But to truly practice this as a trade takes a great amount of skill and years of dedication. So we've carved a spandrel for an oak thing. We've done some egg and dart things that copy some of the things we've done at Winter Tour. And finally, we started working on this French panel. Now, what's interesting about this is we built this sample wall for a client and for other clients to look at, talking about how French moldings really work. And we took this out of a French pattern book. And if you see the moldings and how deep cut these moldings are and the shape of the panels, you begin to see a little bit how different the French moldings were, right? An English panel mold versus a French one, they're just miles apart, right? Vasyl and I stood here in front of this thing and decided to carve on top of this panel, right? This classical French carved detail of the music room, right? Where you see the flute and you see horns and cymbals and different elements carved onto a panel. So one of the things we're always trying to do is figure out, you know, what to do based on historic precedent. And, you know, one of these books from César Daly is a number of plates from French rooms that show off, you know, it tells us the date. This is Louis XIV. This is a fireplace over mantle. You see the cherubs above. I mean, the level of detail that the French put into their designs and their motifs are crazy. We've talked about French doors before. But one of the things you'll see typical in a French panel, much like this panel, is kind of these carvings. And this one has a military motif with the arrows and the sword and the helmet. And of course, this one is more like ours, a music room where you have this page of notes, but you also have some kind of violin type thing. You have trumpets, you have different motifs. And this is really what we took as our design motif for our deal. So what Vasyl's working on right now is this carving, and we're going to look at here in a second. And then we've got another carving down below, which is going to go on this lower panel. So we are really dressing up this center panel. Before, these are hand carved too. These are moldings that we did this probably 10 years ago for a client, but these moldings are also hand carved. And so you're going to see the maturity of our ability to carve based on Vasyl's skill, Vasyl's mastery of carving. And now we finally have someone in our staff who can help us replicate those masterful rooms that are lost, right, to time, right? The lost art of building, which I talk about quite a bit. We don't know how to do this anymore, right? This might be done on a CNC carver, it might be done, but to truly actually get it made by hand is a level of skill we just never possessed before. And so I'm really excited that this guy's here, and the things that we're going to be able to do for the clients coming up is really exciting. So we're in the shop and we're looking at this panel, right? Remember, this is that middle panel with this arch. It starts with inspiration, right? Trying to figure out what you're going to make. Vasyl was really helpful in helping us find stuff where we found this music room panel, right? And you'll see as you look closely that there is a bunch of musical instruments, and there's a sheet and the music sheet of how things are done. And then we've got this beautiful shell at the top, you know, holding this thing together with the ribbon. Now, what Vasyl did is a couple of things, and all these parts they come apart, but they'll go back together, is, you know, he created the wings in this conch shell. He cut into the molding and added this kind of furled leaf detail. And really, when you get into here and feel the dainty nature of these moldings and just how soft they are, that it becomes this magical experience. This is actually, you know, lifts off. It's kind of surreal to lift it off because it looks like it's attached to that page. But you can see where our design came from, and you can see the symbol, the flute and the horn, little triangle here. And these beautiful flowers. You got an oak leaf flower and these other wildflowers here. This kind of carving with the wreath is really quite beautiful, how it wraps around here and ties. All just beautiful detail. And we also had to cut down our panel, right? We had to create this little cutaway inside this panel, which is kind of a typical French detail, but when all these pieces come together, right, and these things are back on here, it's really quite beautiful. The other thing that happened is we wanted to dress up the whole panel. So again here, you'll see that we cut this section out, and when I say we, I mean Vasyl, cut this beautiful little shape out that then this beautiful shape, you know, fits right into. These are leaf details that will sit right here when this bottom panel mold comes back on. Putting this panel together, right, totally elevates the nature of that room. It goes from a simple French panel to something that's magical, all copying the past, all looking back to the past to help us learn how to build and how to construct and how to design and how to craft. Vasyl is carving that bottom panel that's going to go below this one. So we're going to have a very symmetrical, two-sided central panel that's completely elevated, and he's carving that lower panel. Obviously, to replicate some of these French rooms with the gilding and everything else is probably not to everybody's taste these days, right? And so the opportunity, though, is if you saw our video on the period revival house, that Georgian mantle with the level of carving and detail of 1928, this is an opportunity to do those kind of things that we can now offer our clients. So guys, the lost art of building, right? So we're talking about this French panel, which I think is kind of the highest elevation of carpentry and carving in the world, right? So learning how to replicate the past, getting the skills and building a team that can help you reproduce the past, elevates your game, elevates your ability to serve your clients and to do better work. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We're doing a lot of behind the scenes things with Vasyl and his carving right now. If you want to follow that, be sure to follow me. I'm Brent Hull. Thanks for watching.